Okay, hello, good afternoon. And my name is Jacqui Mulville, and I lecture in archaeology. And the image that you're seeing is actually not our students, but it sort of relates to what we do. So in SHARE in general, and I guess in archaeology and history in particular, we do quite a lot of outreach and engagement work. So this is a picture of some of our outreach and engagement work at music festivals. These are copies of of hollow, basically beaten gold hats that were found in Germany, but they also feature as astronomical and lunar calendars. So I made copies out of paper mache and took them out to talk to people about Bronze Age people's attitudes to the sun, the moon, the stars. Okay, so that's just these sort of things we do, and it'll become apparent what this got to happen. So we have sort of strengths in public engagement, and we spend quite a lot of time and our energy doing it. But one of the things, that we haven't done until fairly recently is try to draw that sort of completely back into our teaching. So we spent a lot of time and energy from widening access through to kind of co-creation. So we have a project on with the residents of Ely about excavating the Kaya Hill Fort. So we have lots of staff who've got skills, and also we've got lots of students who've gained kind of skills. But really, in order to sort of complete the circle, we actually need to start teaching this back into our classes and to allow, to, I suppose, give our knowledge more firmly back, and particularly to undergraduates, because a lot of our postgraduates will help out at events. But we thought that particularly we should try and get the postgraduates, and it's not moving, you swine, to deal with this. So I decided to create a module that would sort of allow them to do this. So the idea is that we would provide students with the skills and training, and then we would ask them to organise a public event. So the idea was that they then have to run an event, and they have to partner with somebody outside the institution. Now again, we're quite lucky because we already have quite good links with the National Museum of Wales, with CADU, who's the historic body that look after Wales. And with a variety of things, and we obviously have contacts, and we have quite good examples of the things that we do. Because another scheme that we also run is a thing called Share with Schools, and that's where people from School of Share go in and run workshops in schools. So we do that with a number of schools within the community. So we've also got schools as our partnerships. We don't actually have so much businesses, but as you'll see, we managed to get out there. So the idea was that we challenged them to run a single day event or events for an audience of their choice. Most of them went for sort of general audiences. I mean, again, one of the things I'm interested in is I was funded via the Beacons for Wales. I ran a Beacons for Wales project, which was something that went on a couple of years ago, and I worked particularly with 14 to 16-year-olds in partnership with the National Museum and an artist. And Mike Bruford from Biosciences, we did a project basically on sort of genetic modification, domestication, and what would happen in the future. Okay, so I was quite interested to push them a bit to work with audiences as probably slightly more difficult, but I think that quite wisely a number of them possibly drew back a little from some of these. And the whole thing was highly creative and experimental, both in terms of sort of me running it and what we're asking the students to do, because it's not the sort of thing that they're normally asked to do. They're not normally asked to do something which has quite a high level of risk attached to it. Oh no, hang on. I'm going the wrong way, aren't we? Let me try. So there's a 20 credit module, which meant that basically we met them minimum 1 to 1 hour a week. Okay? Students were given training, they were divided into groups, and each group was given, we provided them with training in teamwork, which is always really funny, because I've just done the module feedback from a module I've just taught, which again we teach teamwork, and we always get the feedback is that was completely useless. But if you don't, what I have discovered is if you don't teach teamwork, they're much worse at it. So even though the students think it's useless, it actually is useful. I can see that it's actually useful. So we gave them some training in how to work together as teams, and every single group ended up with a supervisor. And so they had 15 hours formal training classes, and then they were given individual group project support. Okay, so as they sort of developed their projects, they were given somebody they could go to in a group and talk to about what it was they thought they were doing. To assess them, we evaluated their event, but only in a very sort of loose way. The event itself wasn't what people were marked on, it was their approaches to the event and the way they structured it and the way that they did. I mean, it could have been a complete disaster, and they still could have got quite good marks for it, because what we did discover was a lot of things, well, as everybody discovered, is a number of things are outside your control with regards to running any sort of public event. Something as simple as the weather can have a huge impact on what's going on. But also, as it's a learning experience, you know, understanding that is incredibly important. So the report was sort of their account of them attempting to run it, and them also having to evaluate how successful it was. So there were stages, the idea being, you know, it's all about your planning and your sort of reflection and the evaluation rather than the event itself, because we realised that they may not run. They applied for funding. Their funding was £50 per group. So they put in a little funding pot. They had to produce kind of a very early outline that we could discuss with them, and some social media and blog entries. And you know, some of them engaged, well, most of them engaged with social media, and some of them engaged very successfully with social media. And then our little kind of our trip, which was very funny because one of the most popular things was we just went to Stonehenge on a field trip. And it was mostly to look, because we have a PhD student who is part-time with us, but she also runs a visitor centre at Stonehenge. So she took us through Stonehenge, not from an archaeological point of view, as much as from a visitor's experience point of view, and how you manage crowds, how you lead them through events, and what you think about. So, and also it was great because they just opened, so it's very exciting. Do go to the Stonehenge Visitor Centre. It's very good. I think I spent a little too long in there. Anyway, so to illustrate to you sort of what did they do. So the students went out and they found partnerships in interesting places. And so one of the things we do is we sit down and we kind of brainstorm, you know, what do you know, what do you want to talk about, who do you want to say to it, blah, blah, blah. And at some point we came up with the Vikings and IKEA, and we just couldn't resist it. So one of the events, which is the one on that side, was a Vikea. It was a Viking invasion of IKEA. And if you know, and once you begin to think about it, you think, hang on, Cardiff, Norwegian church, the Vikings in Wales. You know, there's a whole series of things that you can bring into this. So they had build your own Viking boat. They also then brought in Thor the movie and the Marvel comics. So they did a sort of 360 degrees sort of consideration of Viking culture in modern Wales and in ancient Wales. And they took it to IKEA and ran it. IKEA are very keen on these kind of collaborations, but again, as running student events isn't their main business, they did keep moving them around, and they were a little disappointed because they'd structured it for an older age group, and they ended up being shoved in the corner of the cafe and abandoned with hundreds of children. You know, that's a very valuable formative experience. So, they were very successful. They spoke to hundreds of people, but they were just disappointed because in the end they couldn't manage their audiences. Okay. Museum detectives with the National Museum of Wales, where we have archaeological conservators, and they organise these sort of trails around the museum to think about conservation. And again, that was very good. They did want to do an experiment where they were boiling a kettle to demonstrate what damaged water vapour did to things, but they couldn't do that for health and safety reasons. So they had to think about health and safety. They had to think about crowd control. They had to think about timing and timetabling, and being worn out from talking to the public. And again, luckily we've done a lot of this, so we can actually provide very good advice on how to do it or how not to do it. So there you are, how objects are preserved and maintained, National Museum, archaeological significance of the Scandinavian Wales and Welsh country. About 200 people joined in. Other events, and we have a representative of Archaeology as Rubbish over here, was, we loved archaeology as rubbish. We loved most of them. This was one about thinking about archaeology as rubbish, and the best thing that you came up with was archaeology Jenga. So basically, if you think about archaeology comes in layers. It's called stratigraphy. So you get, layers that are older than each other. And the students embedded a series of layers of polystyrene with kind of chronologically identifiable artifacts, like iPhones, or whatever. Asked people to create this sort of big heap in order of time periods, to get people just to think about how do we understand time, how do we understand chronology, how can you date something by thinking about artefacts. And there was a series of other events as well. And then this group were very successful. They did a heritage trail around the bay in collaboration with our, where is he, Graham? Is he gone? Graham, oh there you are, with Graham, our what are you? Employability officer? Yes, anyway. Works in Share, does something. And again, they were highly successful because, because they ended up getting sponsorship by a minister. They were clever enough that they thought, we're going to go down the bay, we'll do, so they went to the pier head. They were launched by a minister, for goodness sake. I mean, this was just an undergraduate module. They did fantastic social media, I have to say. They had a sunny day, the same day as Archaeology's Rubbish had a sunny day. Theirs was outside, Archaeology's Rubbish is inside. That's what the weather does for you. If it rained, Archaeology and Rubbish would have got loads of visitors, and the other ones wouldn't. And this is, you have to plan for those sorts of eventualities. And what's the other point? One of the other points that was very interesting was we had one of the girls who was very quiet, and has always been very quiet, and didn't appear to be sort of contributing to the team. But these are her pictures. These are her images. She created. It turned out the girl was a fantastic artist. We didn't know. She created these images, and she created a really big image of the bay. That once you'd gone around the trail, you came and you could colour in a little square. They did have an issue because they couldn't get one family to leave because they just spent hours colouring most of it anyway. These are all your valuable skills, I think. And then the final ones that we had were a couple of ones that we ran in partnership with Share with Schools, which we already have partners. We already have sort of, tame, controllable children. So we always knew if everything failed, we could just create 6 things for our Share with Schools project. So we always had this kind of backup plan. A couple of them chose to work with the school children, and another group decided to work with Aberdare Hall to explore kind of the history and role of women in Cardiff, because Aberdare Hall has this fantastic history about women, what's happened, women in education, women in education in Cardiff. So in the school they explored, so they dressed up and didn't they do medieval food shopping? We had a basket of food and you had to decide what food you're going to put in your basket as to whether it was medieval or not and things. I've been going to borrow that one for the Neolithic. Shopping and dressing up, and the history of the Aberdare family, and education in women. I shall finish soon. So the outcomes were, we had very engaged students, I would say. They all spent quite a long time and put a huge amount of effort into this. Our partners were all satisfied, thankfully. There's a lot of trust involved. We're sending our students to represent us at the National Museum of Wales. If what they did was a disaster, they probably would have been cleared from the main hall quite quickly. But, it's all about the sort of trust within these relationships. But everything went really, really well. There was a lot of communication involved. We got fantastic publicity. And we enterprise, we give our students this whole series of skills about, being creative, about thinking, about making contacts, about thinking about timing and planning and teamwork and, employability, obviously. Yes, it was hard work and it was time heavy. And that was one thing. There were 4 members of staff involved in the sort of supervision. And that's because all of us work in public engagement and we're very keen to see this sort of module run. There are people who are talking about extending it, and I think that maybe one of the issues would be, if you have staff who don't want to do it, it's probably not going to be as successful, because everybody we involved had very good links and was very good at sort of thinking about these things. And we ended up with, fantastic student feedback. So, we had some who've emailed me since they've gone and said that, they've just been accepted onto a graduate scheme for a company, and it was talking about the Viking invasion of IKEA was what she thinks got her in. And so, someone else just wrote saying, I've now decided to go with cultural heritage, and it's been a fantastic module. So, the students got a lot out of it. And I don't know, I think it was very successful. But anyway, I shall leave it now to the student who took the programme who would like to say something.
I'm Anna Young. I'm a third year archaeology undergraduate and I took Jacqui's module last year. As you heard from Jackie, I was part of the Archaeology is Rubbish module. Our event basically focused on the idea of archaeological middens, so rubbish heaps, and what we can learn from people from their rubbish. So we also wanted to include and embed ideas such as material culture by including real artefacts from various periods, from the Neolithic right up until Victorian artefacts, which was lots of people from toddlers to pensioners really engaged with these artefacts and made them think about what we could learn from people from their rubbish, which, you know, we're very separated from our rubbish nowadays. You know, we put it in a bin, it gets taken to a landfill, we don't see it. So a lot of people have never really had the chance to engage with rubbish. We also wanted to include the idea of stratification. As Jackie mentioned, we came up with a stratification Jenga, and this worked on a couple of levels. Small children just saw it as a puzzle, fitting blocks on top of each other. But as they got older, you were able to discuss things such as coins were used as, you know, could be used as dating artefacts, and things such as stone tools and various other things. They realised that metalwork would come much later than stone. So we were able to not just talk about a period of time with archaeology, but about archaeology as a discipline within the by using middens as an example. I worked in a team of 3, and it was interesting. It was very interesting. They're some of my best friends, so I can't say too much about them. But one of them's really artistic, and he created the logo that you saw, and was brilliant at creating some resources and things. Because our last part of our event was a collage, which is a future midden. So we asked the public to imagine what archaeologists would be digging up in 5,000 years' time. So he ran that aspect, and we had a massive, brilliant collage when he drew the Cardiff skyline, and all the children and adults participated in creating that. My other friend, she was very supportive, and if I was able to delegate things to her, and we were able to work like that. I kind of fell into the leadership role. This was partly because I already had a contact at Cardiff Story Museum. I volunteer there, so that sort of worked out like that. But working with Cardiff Story, having a partnership with them, meant that we had to liaise with people outside of the university setting. Once you're an undergraduate in university, your life becomes very insular within the university setting. You know, it's all about essays, the library, your friends, socials within the university setting. So this was a really good experience to try to engage with people outside of university in a professional capacity as well as a personal capacity on the day. We kind of had to learn as we went. We did have lectures to begin with that informed us about how people learned, how people engaged in things, but practical things like sending an email, I had to receive something from the lady at Cardiff Story and then work out the kind of tenor in which to reply. You know, it was kind of sort of feeling your way through. This module was very, very enjoyable, but very stressful and took a lot of time. It's definitely perhaps something for second years rather than third years because of the dissertation. So I think it'd be easier for second years to do. It's extremely different to any other module I've done in my time at Cardiff. It's very hands-on. It was you would be able to create something from nothing, from your own personal idea, rather than completing an essay question or an exam. You were able to be very creative and try and sort through problems that arose. It was vital, and from those problems, it highlighted the fact that you needed to work as a team. It was absolutely vital, because we had so much to do in such a short space of time, like design the event, gather the materials, contact and create a relationship with the museum, as well as running the event on the day. It definitely helped with many enterprising skills, such as time management. We weren't given a set timetable. We were given advice roughly when to run our event, but it meant that as a team we had to create a timetable and we had to stick to it and if a problem came up, we had to change it and work with it. The module also gave a lot of people, talking to them, the confidence to approach people outside of university in a professional capacity and ask for these opportunities, actually go up to professional people and go, am I able to hold an event here? Is it possible? Would this be helpful? Rather than just think that's a good idea and never follow through. It sort of made you determined to complete what you'd started. Also, it helped with things such as data manipulation at the end when we were trying to analyse how well our event went by participants, and we had to think from the beginning about our feedback and how that would work and try and make it fun and creative rather than a form for people to fill in when they wouldn't fill it in. We used little bins and coloured tokens, and they would put how they felt in the bins. So green token be good, red token be bad, and we'd ask them questions and they just put them in the bins to follow through the rubbish theme. It also helped us research. We had to really research what we felt, what we thought our target audience was, the level on which we should talk to them. You know, should we use words like stratigraphy or very complex ideas, or should we try and simplify it down? We kind of had an element of both because we were dealing with families. So there were some grandparents who were really interested and wanted to know, you know, they'd watched years of Time Team and wanted to know absolutely everything. And there were obviously little children who had just started to walk, and they were more interested in sort of touching things and the experience of it rather than the theory behind it. So that was interesting because you sort of had to go from 1 second talking to, you know, someone about Mesolithic, Neolithic transition, and you know, people going from moving around to staying in one place, to a child going, that's a really good colouring in, well done, we'll put that on the wall. So it was really interesting on the day. So it helped with communicating skills for many different types of people, not just in the professional capacity. I feel that it will benefit my CV. I personally would like to work in the heritage sector, so the practical experience of not only working within a museum, but running an event within a museum, I feel is very useful, and it shows dedication that you will not only start something, but see it through till the end. And I think it will also help in the wider employment employment environment because of the aforementioned skills that I've just mentioned. But it's a very enjoyable module, and I'd like to thank Jacqui, even if it was very stressful at some points. But thank you very much.